Victoria Sterling grabbed the glass of red wine from the waiter's tray and threw it directly into the black man's face. "Get your filthy hands off my daughter!" The crimson liquid dripped down Marcus Thompson's cheeks like tears of blood. 300 guests erupted in laughter. Phones rose from every direction, recording his humiliation for the world to see. He had only caught the young woman from falling. But what Victoria Sterling didn't know, what nobody in that glittering Chicago penthouse knew, was that the man she had just publicly destroyed held her entire $5 billion empire in the palm of his hand. And in exactly 4 minutes, he was going to close it. Type your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The wine was still dripping from Marcus Thompson's face when Victoria Sterling's voice cut through the ballroom again. "Security! Where is security? I want this man removed immediately." Marcus didn't move. He stood perfectly still, the Bordeaux running down his rental tuxedo, pooling at his feet on the white marble floor. Around him, 300 of Chicago's wealthiest citizens watched with the hungry eyes of spectators at a blood sport. "Did you hear me?" Victoria stepped closer, her diamond earrings catching the chandelier light. "I said get out. This is a private event for people who actually matter." A man in the crowd laughed. "Vicky, I think he's in shock. Maybe he's never been inside a real building before." More laughter. Scattered applause. Marcus slowly wiped the wine from his eyes with the back of his hand. When he spoke, his voice was calm. Too calm. "I was invited here tonight, Mrs. Sterling." Victoria's perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. She turned to the crowd with theatrical disbelief. "Did you all hear that he was invited?" She laughed a sharp, cutting sound. "Sweetheart, the catering staff entrance is around back, and even they wouldn't let you in looking like that." Her daughter Megan appeared at her mother's side, rubbing her arm where Marcus had caught her. "He grabbed me, Mother. I was just walking by, and he put his hands on me." "I caught you," Marcus said quietly. "You were about to fall." "I was not about to fall," Megan snapped. "I don't need help from people like you." "People like me," Marcus repeated. The words hung in the air. Victoria's husband Richard pushed through the crowd, his face flushed from whiskey and outrage. "What the hell is going on here? Who let this man in?" "That's exactly what I'm trying to find out, darling." Victoria's eyes never left Marcus. "He claims he was invited. Can you imagine?" Richard looked Marcus up and down with unconcealed disgust. "This is the Vancroft Charity Gala. The guest list is extremely exclusive. There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," Marcus said. He reached into his jacket pocket. "I have my invitation right." "Don't you dare reach into your pocket." Richard stepped back, his hand flying up. "Security, he's reaching for something." 2 guards materialized, instantly flanking Marcus on either side. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us," the larger one said, gripping Marcus's arm. "I have an invitation." Marcus repeated, his voice still steady. "If you'll just let me show you." "That won't be necessary." Victoria's smile was ice. "We've seen quite enough. Please escort this gentleman out through the service entrance. We don't want to disturb our actual guests any further." As the guards began to pull Marcus toward the exit, Victoria's son Bradley emerged from a cluster of young men in expensive suits. He was holding his phone up, recording. "Hey, smile for the camera, buddy," Bradley called out. "This is definitely going on TikTok. Man crashes billionaire party, gets what he deserves. It's gonna get 1 million views." His friends howled with laughter. "Bradley, don't waste your storage on this creature," Victoria said, but she was smiling. "He's not worth the pixels." "Oh, I don't know, Mother. I think people need to see what happens when certain types of people forget their place." Marcus stopped walking. The guards tried to pull him forward, but he planted his feet. "Let me go." "Sir, please don't make this difficult." "I said, let me go." Something in his voice made the guards hesitate. The laughter in the room began to fade. There was a new energy now, a tension that hadn't been there before. Victoria felt it. For the briefest moment, something flickered across her face. Uncertainty. But she pushed it away. "Oh, how dramatic," she said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "What are you going to do? Don't you understand? You're nothing here. You have no power. You have no connections. You have no money. You are absolutely, completely, utterly nothing." Marcus turned to face her directly. The wine had dried on his skin now, leaving dark streaks down his cheeks. "Nothing," he said softly. "Yes, nothing. Nothing. Victoria spelled it out slowly, as if speaking to a child. "I don't know how you got past security. I don't know who gave you that invitation, probably stole it. But I know exactly what you are. And what you are doesn't belong in rooms like this." The crowd murmured its agreement. A few people clapped. "Tell him Vicky," someone called out. "Put him in his place." Marcus looked around the room, at the glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos, at the champagne towers and the ice sculptures, at the faces all white, all wealthy, all staring at him like he was something unpleasant on the bottom of their shoes. Then he looked back at Victoria Sterling. "You have no idea who I am, do you?" Victoria laughed. "Should I? Are you famous? A celebrity? Oh wait, let me guess, you're a rapper, an athlete. Which basketball team do you play for?" More laughter from the crowd. Bradley was still filming. "Tell us," Bradley shouted. "Who are you, mystery man? The suspense is killing us." Marcus reached into his pocket again. This time, no one stopped him. He pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Victoria demanded. "Calling for backup. Maybe your gang friends will come rescue you." Marcus didn't answer. He was scrolling through his contacts. When he found what he was looking for, he tapped the screen and raised the phone to his ear. The room fell silent, watching him with a mixture of amusement and confusion. "Patricia," Marcus said into the phone. "It's me. I need you to execute Protocol 7. A woman's voice came through the speaker loud enough for those closest to hear. "Protocol 7, sir. Are you certain that would terminate all pending agreements with—" "All of them," Marcus said. "Effective immediately. Sir, the Sterling merger alone is worth—" "I know what it's worth, Patricia. Cancel it. Cancel everything. Every contract, every partnership, every agreement. I want the name Sterling completely removed from our systems by morning." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Understood, Mr. Thompson. I'll begin immediately." Marcus ended the call. For a moment, nothing happened. The name Thompson meant nothing to most of the people in the room. They were still smiling, still waiting for the punchline. But Richard Sterling had gone completely pale. "Thompson," he whispered. "Marcus Thompson." Victoria looked at her husband impatiently. "What do you know this person?" Richard's hands had started to shake. "Victoria, do you know who Marcus Thompson is?" "I don't care who Marcus Thompson is. I want him removed from my— He's the founder of Titan Global Holdings." The words landed like a bomb in the center of the room. Victoria's smile froze on her face. "What did you say?" "Titan Global Holdings." Richard's voice was barely audible now. "The company we've been negotiating with for the past 18 months. The merger that was going to save us. The $5 billion deal that was supposed to be announced tonight." The color drained from Victoria's face. "No," she said. "No, that's impossible. The CEO of Titan Global is standing right in front of you," Marcus finished. "Covered in the wine you threw in my face." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a snowflake land on the terrace outside. Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. "I was invited here tonight." Marcus continued, his voice calm and measured. "Because your husband's company is dying, has been dying for years. Bad investments, hidden debts, a gambling addiction he thinks you don't know about." Richard made a strangled sound. "The Sterling Empire is $800 million in debt. Without the Titan merger, you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. Your properties will be seized. Your assets frozen. Everything your family built over 3 generations will be gone." Victoria's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed her husband's arm to steady herself. "That merger," Marcus continued, "was going to inject $5 billion into your company. It was going to save your home, your reputation, your legacy. It was going to ensure your children would never have to work a day in their lives." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But you didn't know any of that when you threw wine in my face. You didn't know it when you called me nothing. You didn't know it when you told me I didn't deserve to breathe the same air as you." I didn't." Victoria's voice was a croak. "You knew one thing about me, Mrs. Sterling. One thing and one thing only." Marcus pointed to his own face. "And it was enough for you to decide I was worthless." Bradley had lowered his phone. His face had gone gray. "Dad, what's happening? What is he talking about?" Richard couldn't answer. He was staring at Marcus like a man watching his own execution. "The merger is canceled," Marcus said. "Every partnership, every contract, every agreement between Titan Global and Sterling Industries is terminated as of this moment. By morning, your creditors will be notified. By noon, the news will be public. By this time next week, you won't be able to afford the valet parking at an event like this. Please." The word came from Victoria, barely a whisper. "Please, you can't." "I can," Marcus said. "And I am." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. Black titanium, his name etched in platinum. He handed it to Victoria, who took it with trembling fingers. "That's who I am, Mrs. Sterling. That's who you threw wine at. That's who you called nothing." Victoria stared at the card in her hand. Her lips moved silently as she read the words. Marcus Thompson, founder and CEO, Titan Global Holdings. When she looked up, there were tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know," she said. "How could I have known if you had just told us who you were? Why should I have had to?" Marcus's voice hardened for the first time. "Why should my worth as a human being depend on the number of zeros in my bank account? You didn't need to know I was a billionaire to treat me with basic decency. You only needed to know I was a person." Victoria had no answer. "You want to know the saddest part?" Marcus looked around the room at the frozen faces of Chicago's elite. "I grew up 10 blocks from here. My grandmother cleaned houses in this neighborhood for 40 years. She scrubbed toilets and washed windows so she could afford to send me to school." He paused, his voice softening. "She used to tell me stories about the people in these houses, how some of them treated her like she was invisible, like she was less than human. I promised her I would never ever treat anyone that way, no matter how successful I became." Marcus looked directly at Victoria. "I kept that promise. Tonight you showed me that you never had to make it." "Please." Richard stepped forward, his hands clasped together like a man in prayer. "Mr. Thompson, please. I'm begging you. My children, my family, will lose everything. Isn't there something, anything we can do to make this right?" Marcus considered the man before him, the great Richard Sterling, patriarch of a dynasty reduced to begging in his own home. "You want to know what you can do?" Marcus asked. "Anything. Name it. Whatever you want. You can remember this moment." Marcus's voice was quiet, but carried to every corner of the room. "You can remember what it felt like when you realized that the man you dismissed as nothing held your entire future in his hands. And maybe the next time you see someone who doesn't look like you, who doesn't dress like you, who doesn't have the connections you have, you'll remember that you don't know their story. You don't know their worth. You don't know what they might become." He straightened his wine-stained jacket. "That's what you can do, Mr. Sterling. But it won't change what happens next." Marcus began to walk toward the exit. The crowd parted before him, like the Red Sea guests pressing themselves against the walls to avoid any contact. "Wait." It was Megan. She rushed forward, tears streaming down her face, her earlier cruelty completely forgotten. "Please, Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry." I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have lied about you grabbing me. It was wrong. I know it was wrong. But please don't destroy my family because of me. I'll apologize publicly. I'll do whatever you want. Just please." Marcus stopped. He looked at the young woman who 15 minutes ago had accused him of assault. "Why didn't you say thank you?" he asked quietly. "What? When I caught you. When I kept you from falling. Why didn't you just say thank you?" Megan's mouth opened. Closed. No words came. "That's all it would have taken," Marcus said. 2 words. 2 simple words, and none of this would be happening. But you looked at me, and you decided that I didn't deserve those 2 words. That I deserved to be humiliated instead. He shook his head slowly. "Your apology doesn't fix that. Your tears don't fix that. The only thing that would have fixed it was treating me like a human being from the beginning. And that's something you chose not to do." He continued toward the door. "Mr. Thompson." Victoria's voice was ragged, desperate. She had pushed through the crowd and was following him, her designer heels clicking frantically on the marble. "Mr. Thompson, please. I was wrong. I was horrible. I know that now. But my family shouldn't pay for my mistakes. My husband, my children, they didn't do anything." Marcus stopped and turned. "Your husband called me a job fair crasher. Your son filmed my humiliation and promised to make it go viral. Your daughter accused me of assault. Every single member of your family chose to participate in destroying me tonight. But we didn't know. You didn't need to know." For the first time, Marcus's voice rose. "That's the point, Mrs. Sterling. That's the whole point. You didn't need to know I was a billionaire to treat me with respect. You only needed to recognize that I was a human being. But you couldn't do that. None of you could. Because all you saw was the color of my skin." Victoria flinched, as if she'd been struck. "One day," Marcus continued, his voice dropping back to its previous calm, "someone is going to look at your children the way you looked at me tonight. Someone with more power, more money, more influence. And they're going to decide that your children are nothing, that they're worthless, that they don't deserve basic human dignity." He looked at Bradley, still frozen with his phone in his hand, at Megan, mascara running down her cheeks, at Richard swaying on his feet like he might collapse at any moment. "When that day comes, I want you to remember tonight. I want you to remember what it felt like to be nothing. And I want you to understand that all of this is what you taught them. This is the legacy you created." Marcus turned and walked out of the ballroom. Behind him, the silence was broken only by Victoria Sterling's sobs and the distant sound of sirens somewhere in the city below. The Titan-Sterling merger was dead, and in the morning, the whole world would know exactly why. Marcus didn't look back as he walked through the grand foyer of the penthouse. His footsteps echoed on the marble floor, the same floor where just minutes ago he had been treated like garbage. A doorman rushed to open the exit for him, eyes wide with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. "Sir, can I get you? Do you need?" The man couldn't find the words. "I'm fine," Marcus said. "Thank you for asking." 2 simple words. Thank you. It cost nothing. It took less than a second. And yet, in that glittering ballroom full of people who had everything not a single person had thought to offer them. The December wind hit Marcus's face as he stepped outside. Snow was falling now, soft white flakes drifting down through the glow of the street lamps. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting the cold air fill his lungs. His phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Protocol 7 executed. All Sterling agreements terminated. Press release drafted for your approval." "Are you okay?" Marcus typed back. "I'm okay. Send the release at 6 a.m. He slid the phone back into his pocket and looked up at the penthouse windows 30 floors above. Even from here, he could see figures moving behind the glass, panicking, crying, trying to figure out how their world had ended so suddenly. Part of him felt nothing. They had made their choice, and choices had consequences. But another part, a smaller part, the part that still remembered his grandmother's calloused hands and tired smile, felt something else. Something like sadness. Not for the Sterlings. They would survive. They would lose their money, their status, their power. But they would survive. No. The sadness was for something else. For the fact that in 2024, in the United States of America, a black man could still walk into a room and be treated like he was less than human simply because of the color of his skin. For the fact that nothing had really changed. For the fact that his grandmother, who had died believing that one day things would be different, would have recognized everything that happened tonight. Marcus flagged down a cab. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Home," Marcus said. "I need to check on my son." As the cab pulled away from the curb, Marcus allowed himself one final glance at the Sterling penthouse. The party would be over now. The guests would be fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. By morning, the Sterlings would be the most hated family in America. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Marcus just wanted to hold his son and remember why he had built his empire in the first place. Not for revenge, not for power, but so that one day boys like Isaiah wouldn't have to prove their worth to people who had already decided they were worthless. One day, but not today. The cab moved through Chicago's snowy streets in silence. Marcus stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere 40 years in the past, in a tiny apartment on the South Side, where a woman with hands roughened by decades of cleaning other people's homes had taught him everything that mattered. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his son. "Dad, where are you? You said you'd be home by 10. Marcus glanced at his watch. It was almost midnight. "I'm sorry, Isaiah. Something happened at the event. I'm on my way now." "What kind of something?" His son's voice carried that particular tone of teenage suspicion. "You sound weird." "I'll tell you when I get home." "Dad?" "Isaiah." There was a pause. Then, "Are you okay?" Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. 12 years old, and the boy already knew how to ask the questions that mattered. "I'm okay," he said. "I promise. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call and leaned his head back against the seat. The cab driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror but said nothing. Marcus was grateful for that. 24 hours ago, everything had been different. 24 hours ago, Marcus Thompson had woken up in his modest brownstone in Lincoln Park, modest by billionaire standards anyway, and looked at the invitation sitting on his kitchen counter. Cream-colored cardstock embossed lettering the Sterling family crest stamped in gold. "You are cordially invited to the Sterling Family Charity Gala." He had picked it up, turned it over in his hands. 18 months of negotiations, countless meetings with lawyers and intermediaries, and tonight finally he would meet the Sterlings face to face. Tonight the merger would be announced. Tonight, two corporate empires would become one. Isaiah had wandered into the kitchen, still half asleep, his school uniform untucked. "What's that?" "An invitation to a party. A fancy party." Isaiah had grabbed a box of cereal from the cabinet. "Like with those tiny foods that don't fill you up," Marcus had laughed. "Exactly like that." "Why do you even go to those things? You hate them." It was true. Marcus had spent the last 20 years building Titan Global Holdings into a $58 billion empire, and in all that time, he had never once appeared on a magazine cover, never given a television interview, never shown his face at the industry events where deals were made over champagne and lies. He had his reasons for staying invisible. "This one's important," he had told his son. "The people I'm meeting tonight, our companies are joining together. It's going to change things." Change things how? Marcus had thought about it. "You know how Grandma Rose used to talk about building something that lasts, something that helps people, even after you're gone?" Isaiah nodded. He had heard the stories 100 times. This deal will let us do that on a bigger scale. More jobs, more opportunities, more chances for people like us to get a seat at the table. Isaiah had considered this while chewing his cereal. So, it's a good thing. I think so. I hope so. Then why do you look nervous? Marcus had smiled at his son's perception. Because I've never met these people before. I only know them through their lawyers. And sometimes people are different in person than they are on paper. How right he had been. The cab pulled up to his brownstone now, and Marcus paid the driver and stepped out into the snow. The lights were on in the living room. Isaiah had waited up. When Marcus opened the front door, his son was sitting on the couch, a textbook open on his lap, but his eyes on his phone. Dad? Isaiah's face changed the moment he saw him. What happened to your shirt? Marcus looked down. He had almost forgotten. The wine stain had dried now, leaving a dark brown splotch across his chest that looked almost like blood. Someone spilled their drink on me. Someone spilled a whole bottle. Something like that. Isaiah set his phone down. Dad, what really happened? Marcus sank into the chair across from his son. For a moment, he just sat there looking at the boy who was the center of his entire universe. Isaiah had his mother's eyes deep brown, always searching, always seeing more than people expected. Do you remember what I told you about Grandma Rose? Marcus finally asked. You've told me a lot of things about Grandma Rose. About how people treated her, when she cleaned houses in the nice neighborhoods. Isaiah's expression shifted. He understood now, or at least he was beginning to. Someone treated you like that tonight. A lot of someone's. Because you're black. Marcus nodded slowly. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Then, what did you do? I canceled the deal. The big one. The $5 billion one. Yes. Isaiah's eyes went wide. You walked away from $5 billion because someone was racist to you. I walked away from $5 billion because a family showed me who they really were, and who they really were wasn't who I wanted to build something with. Isaiah processed this. Grandma Rose would be proud of you. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He felt his eyes sting and looked away. I hope so. She would, Isaiah said with absolute certainty. She always said that money doesn't mean anything if you lose yourself getting it. Marcus looked at his son, 12 years old and already wiser than most of the adults in that ballroom tonight. How did you get so smart? Isaiah shrugged. Good genes, I guess. Marcus laughed, the first real laugh he had managed since leaving the Sterling penthouse. Go to bed. You have school tomorrow. But I want to hear what happened. Tomorrow. I'll tell you everything tomorrow. Isaiah gathered his textbook and stood, but at the bottom of the stairs he turned back. Hey, Dad. Yeah. Those people who were mean to you, what's going to happen to them? Marcus thought about Victoria Sterling's face when she realized who he was. The terror in her eyes, the way her legs had buckled. They're going to learn that actions have consequences. Isaiah nodded, satisfied. Good. After his son went upstairs, Marcus sat alone in the living room for a long time. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white. His phone kept buzzing Patricia with updates his legal team, with questions reporters who had somehow already gotten wind of the story, but he ignored all of it. Instead, he thought about the day. The whole day, from beginning to end. He had arrived at the Sterling penthouse at exactly 6 p.m. His driver had dropped him at the main entrance, and Marcus had approached the door with something close to optimism. 18 months of work finally coming to fruition. The first sign of trouble had been the valet. Sir? The young man had stepped in front of Marcus, blocking his path. Can I help you with something? I'm here for the gala. The valet's eyes had traveled from Marcus's face to his shoes and back again. The Sterling Gala. That's right. Are you sure you have the right address? Marcus had kept his voice pleasant. I'm sure. Because this is a private event, very exclusive. If you're looking for the service entrance, I'm not. Something in Marcus's tone had made the valet step back. Of course. Sorry. Go right ahead. But it hadn't ended there. At the front door, a security guard named Greg had stopped him again. Good evening. Invitation, please. Marcus had handed it over. The guard studied it for a long moment, far longer than he had studied the invitations of the white guests who had entered before Marcus. Thompson. The guard said the name like he was tasting something suspicious. I don't see a Thompson on the list. I can assure you I'm expected. The list says what it says. The guard looked up. I'm going to need to verify this. Wait here. Marcus had waited. 5 minutes. 10. 15. He watched through the glass doors as guest after guest sailed past him into the warmth of the penthouse. A white couple who forgot their invitation entirely was admitted with apologetic smiles. A group of drunk young men were welcomed like visiting royalty. But Marcus stood outside in the cold, waiting for verification that never seemed to come. Sir, I'm going to need to see some ID, Greg had said when he finally returned. Marcus handed over his driver's license. The guard examined it like a TSA agent checking for explosives. This doesn't look right to me. I assure you it's legitimate. The photo doesn't really match. Marcus had looked at the guard evenly. It's my face. I'm going to need to check with management. More waiting. By now, Marcus had been standing outside for nearly an hour. His feet ached, his fingers were numb, and with each passing minute his optimism faded a little more. When he was finally admitted with no apology, no explanation for the delay, the cocktail reception was already over. The networking hour had passed. He had missed the entire first half of the evening. But the worst was yet to come. The moment Marcus entered the ballroom, he felt it. The weight of 300 pairs of eyes turning to look at him with expressions ranging from confusion to contempt. Who is that? Someone whispered. Did security fall asleep? He must be lost. Marcus made his way toward the bar, thinking he would get a drink and find his contact from the Sterling legal team. But before he could take 3 steps, a voice rang out across the room. Oh my God, how did the help get past security? Victoria Sterling. Even before Marcus knew her name, he knew her type. The silver helmet of hair, the diamonds dripping from every visible surface, the absolute certainty that she belonged here and everyone else existed only at her pleasure. Excuse me. Marcus had kept his voice calm. Victoria approached him with the confident stride of someone who had never been contradicted in her life. This is a private event, sweetheart. I don't know who let you in, but you need to leave, now. I was invited. Victoria's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Invited by whom? The janitorial staff. Her husband appeared at her side. Richard Sterling. Marcus recognized him from the due diligence reports, the face of Sterling Industries, even if the company was rotting from the inside. Victoria, what's going on? This man says he was invited. She pronounced the word like it was a joke. Can you imagine? Richard looked Marcus up and down. This is a private event, friend. I don't know what you're doing here, but I have an invitation. Marcus held it up. Your people sent it to me. We've been in negotiations for 18 months. Richard frowned. Negotiations for what? The Titan merger. The Titan. Richard stopped. Something flickered across his face, but before he could finish the thought, his wife cut him off. Richard, don't engage with him. He's clearly delusional. Security. Victoria, wait. I said security. 2 guards approached. Marcus held up his hands. There's been a misunderstanding. If you'll just let me speak to someone from your legal team. The only misunderstanding, Victoria said, is that you somehow thought you belonged here. You don't. You never will. Now get out before I have you arrested for trespassing. The guards grabbed Marcus's arms. He could have fought them, could have made a scene. Instead, he decided to try one more time. "My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm supposed to be meeting with your team tonight about the merger between Titan Global Holdings and Sterling Industries." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "The only person meeting with our team tonight is the CEO of Titan Global, and I can promise you, sweetheart, it's not you." "Why, because I'm black." The words landed like a slap. Victoria's face flushed red. "How dare you? I am not a racist. I have nothing against your people. But this is a formal event for important people, and you are clearly not—" "Not what?" "Not one of us." The words hung in the air. Around them, the party had stopped. Everyone was watching, listening. "Security," Victoria said again, her voice icy. "Remove him." But before the guards could move, a young woman stumbled past her heel, catching on the marble floor. She pitched forward, heading for a hard fall. Marcus reacted on instinct, reaching out and catching her before she hit the ground. The young woman, Victoria's daughter he would learn later, looked up at him with wide eyes. For a split second there was something like gratitude in her expression. Then her face twisted into something else entirely. "He grabbed me," she screamed. "Mother, this man grabbed me. I caught you. You were falling. Liar! You put your hands on me. I felt you grab my arm." Victoria rushed to her daughter's side. "Megan, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "I was just walking by and he grabbed me. I don't know what he was trying to do." The crowd murmured. Dark glances shot in Marcus's direction. Someone said the word police. "I caught her," Marcus repeated, but his voice was drowned out by the rising tide of accusations. That was when Victoria's son appeared holding a glass of red wine like it was a prop he had been waiting to use. "Hey, Mom, looks like you missed the show." Bradley was grinning. "Want me to give him something to remember us by?" Victoria's eyes went cold. "Give it to me." She took the glass from her son's hand, and without a moment's hesitation she threw the contents directly into Marcus's face. "That's for touching my daughter, you animal!" The wine dripped down Marcus's cheeks. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Phones came out to capture the moment. And in that instant, Marcus understood. These people didn't care who he was. They didn't care about the merger, or the $5 billion, or the future of their company. All they cared about was maintaining their illusion of superiority. All they cared about was making sure people like him knew their place. Marcus wiped the wine from his eyes. He looked at Victoria Sterling. He looked at her husband, her son, her daughter. He looked at the 300 faces watching him with expressions of amusement and contempt. And he made his choice. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of a simple understanding that some people could never be partners. Some people could never be trusted. Some people would always choose cruelty over compassion when they thought no one was watching. The Sterlings had made their choice. Now Marcus would make his. In the cab heading home through the snow, Marcus had already set the wheels in motion. The press release would go out at 6 a.m. The world would know exactly what Victoria Sterling had done and exactly what it had cost her family. But as he sat in his living room now hours later, Marcus found himself thinking not about revenge, but about his grandmother. Rose Thompson had been a maid her entire adult life. She had raised Marcus alone after his mother died and his father disappeared. She had worked 60-hour weeks scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets so that Marcus could go to school, play sports, and dream of something bigger. She had never complained, not once. But sometimes late at night when she thought Marcus was asleep, he had heard her crying. Quiet tears muffled by her pillow. The accumulated weight of 1,000 small humiliations. Grandma, Marcus had asked her once, "Why do you let them treat you like that?" Rose had looked at her grandson with eyes that held equal measures of pain and wisdom. "Because I'm playing a longer game, baby. Every time they look down on me, I use it as fuel. Every time they make me feel small, I promise myself that my grandson will never have to feel this way. You're going to be somebody, Marcus. Somebody they can't ignore. Somebody they have to respect." "But what about you?" Rose had smiled. I already am somebody. I'm your grandmother. That's more than enough for me." She had died when Marcus was 22, just before Titan Global closed its first $1 million deal. She never got to see him become a billionaire. She never got to see him on the Forbes list. She never got to see him prove that she was right all along. But Marcus liked to think she knew. Somewhere, somehow, she knew. And he liked to think she would approve of what he had done tonight. Not because he had destroyed the Sterlings, but because he had refused to let them destroy his dignity. He had refused to bow, refused to scrape, refused to pretend that their cruelty was acceptable just because they had money and power. He had chosen himself, and in doing so, he had chosen her. The snow was still falling when Marcus finally climbed the stairs to bed. He paused at Isaiah's door, listening to his son's quiet breathing, and felt a fierce surge of love. This boy would never have to stand outside in the cold, waiting for permission to enter. This boy would never have to smile through insults and pretend they didn't hurt. This boy would grow up knowing that his worth was not determined by the color of his skin or the size of his bank account, but by the content of his character. That was Marcus's real legacy. Not the billions, not the buildings, not the empire. Just this boy, sleeping peacefully, dreaming of a future where his father's struggles would be nothing but history. Marcus closed the door gently and walked to his own room. Tomorrow, the storm would break. Tomorrow, the world would learn what the Sterlings had done. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, Marcus Thompson slept better than he had in years. Because tonight, he had remembered who he was. And no amount of wine, no amount of cruelty, no amount of hate could ever take that away. The phone woke Victoria Sterling at 5:47 a.m. She fumbled for it in the darkness, her head pounding from the champagne she had drunk after the party. After that horrible, confusing disaster of an evening. After the man in the wine-stained tuxedo had walked out of her penthouse and taken something with him. Something she still couldn't quite understand. "Hello?" Her voice was hoarse. "Mrs. Sterling, this is Daniel Whitmore from your PR firm. I need you to turn on the news. Right now." "Daniel, it's not even 6 in the morning. Turn on the news, Victoria, Channel 7, now." Something in his voice made her sit up. She grabbed the remote from Richard's nightstand and clicked on the television. The screen filled with her own face. Not a flattering photo. A screenshot from someone's phone video. Her features twisted in rage. Her arm extended, wine arcing through the air toward a black man's face. The headline beneath it read, "Billionaire CEO humiliates black tech titan at charity gala, loses $5 billion deal." "Oh my God," Victoria whispered. "It's everywhere," Daniel said. "CNN, Fox, MSNBC, every major outlet. It's the top trending topic on Twitter. The video has been viewed 18 million times in the last 3 hours." "That's impossible. How did they who leaked this?" "Everyone leaked it, Victoria. Every single person at that party was filming. There are at least 40 different angles. Someone got the whole thing from the moment you threw the wine to the moment he walked out." Victoria's hands were shaking. On the screen, her own voice screamed, "This is exactly why your kind doesn't belong here." "Turn it off," she said. "Victoria, turn it off." Richard stirred beside her. "What's happening? What time is it?" Victoria couldn't answer. She was staring at her phone, watching the notifications cascade down the screen like a waterfall. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, text messages, emails. Hundreds of them. Thousands. "Victoria." Richard sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" She handed him the phone. He looked at the screen, and she watched the color drain from his face. "This can't be happening," he said. "This can't be real." "It's real." Victoria's voice was flat, hollow. "It's all real." Richard threw off the covers and grabbed his own phone. He started scrolling, his fingers moving faster and faster, his breathing growing more ragged with each passing second. "The merger," he said. What about the merger? Did he actually cancel it? Maybe he was bluffing. Maybe if we just Richard. Call his people, explain that it was a misunderstanding. Richard. Offer some kind of compensation, an apology. Richard. Victoria grabbed his arm. Look at me. Look at my face. Do you really think an apology is going to fix this? Richard stared at his wife. For the first time in their 35-year marriage, she saw something in his eyes that looked like hatred. You threw wine in his face, he said slowly. You threw wine in the face of the man who was going to save our company. I didn't know who he was. You didn't care who he was. You just saw a black man at our party and decided he didn't belong there. That's not fair. Isn't it? Richard stood up, his voice rising. I watched you, Victoria. I watched you humiliate that man for over an hour. I watched you deny him water. I watched you block him from sitting down. I watched you turn our entire party into a spectacle of cruelty, and I said nothing. You were right there with me. You called him a job fair crasher. Because I'm a coward, Richard shouted. Because I always do whatever you want. Because I was so desperate to close this deal that I forgot to act like a human being. Victoria flinched. Don't you dare blame this on me. If you had just handled the negotiations yourself, instead of hiding behind lawyers and intermediaries, we would have known what he looked like. Oh, so now it's my fault. I'm saying we both made mistakes. Your mistake cost us $5 billion, Victoria. Your mistake destroyed our family. The bedroom door burst open. Bradley stood in the doorway, his hair disheveled, his eyes wild. Have you seen the internet? His voice cracked. Have you seen what they're saying about us? We know, Richard said grimly. They're calling us racists. They're calling for boycotts. Someone already created a Wikipedia page called The Sterling Incident. It has 7,000 edits. Megan appeared behind her brother, mascara smeared across her face like she had been crying for hours. Daddy, my phone won't stop. People I went to prep school with are sending me death threats. My sorority sisters are calling me a monster. What do we do? What do we do? Richard looked at his children. These two people he had raised, sheltered, protected, spoiled. He looked at his wife, whose face was frozen in a mask of disbelief. And for the first time in his life, he had no answer. I don't know, he said quietly. I genuinely don't know. The morning only got worse. At 7 a.m., the board of Sterling Industries held an emergency conference call. Richard sat in his home office surrounded by his family as 12 angry faces stared at him from his computer screen. This is a catastrophe, said William Chen, the lead independent director. Our stock is down 23% in pre-market trading. We've lost $400 million in market cap before the exchange even opened. It's going to recover, Richard said, but even he didn't believe it. Once the news cycle moves on. Another director, Sarah Martinez, cut him off. Richard, this isn't going to move on. This is the kind of story that defines a company. Forever. We're going to be known as the racist company. The company that lost $5 billion because the CEO's wife threw wine at a black man. I'm not the CEO, Richard started. I'm the chairman. You're the face of this company. Your name is on the building. And your wife's behavior has destroyed everything we've spent decades building. The merger, Richard said desperately. Maybe there's still a way to salvage it. If I could just talk to Thompson directly. Thompson released a statement an hour ago, William said. Would you like to hear it? Richard's stomach dropped. Yes. William read from his phone. Titan Global Holdings has terminated all negotiations with Sterling Industries effective immediately. This decision was made after members of the Sterling family subjected me to racial harassment, false accusations, and physical assault at an event I attended in good faith. No amount of money is worth partnering with people who view basic human dignity as optional. The $5 billion originally allocated for the Sterling merger will instead be used to establish the Grandma Rose Foundation dedicated to funding minority entrepreneurs and first-generation business owners. I wish the Sterling family well in their future endeavors, though I suspect those endeavors will now be significantly more modest than they had planned. The silence that followed was absolute. "He's not just walking away," Sarah said finally. "He's making an example of us. He's turning our money into his message." "We have to fight back," Victoria said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. "This Thompson person assaulted my daughter. Megan, tell them what happened." Megan's face went pale. "Mom, I don't think—" "Tell them how he grabbed you, how you were just walking by and he put his hands on you." "Mrs. Sterling." William's voice was ice cold. "We've all seen the videos, all 47 of them. Your daughter was falling. Mr. Thompson caught her. She then falsely accused him of assault. That's not a defense. That's another charge waiting to happen." Megan burst into tears. "I didn't mean I was scared. Everyone was looking at me and I just—" "You lied," William said flatly. "On camera, in front of 300 witnesses. And now Marcus Thompson's legal team is probably preparing a defamation lawsuit that will make our current problems look like a parking ticket." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, but Richard cut her off. "What do we do?" "William, what can we possibly do?" The old director sighed heavily. "First, you need to issue a public apology. A real one, not some carefully worded corporate statement. You need to personally apologize to Marcus Thompson. On camera. Today." "Apologize?" Victoria's voice was incredulous. To that billionaire whose goodwill you destroyed, yes," William snapped. "To that self-made titan of industry who employs 300,000 people and controls more capital than your family has accumulated over 3 generations. To that man who until last night was prepared to save your company from the bankruptcy you've been hiding from everyone for the past 5 years." Victoria went very still. "What did you say?" "Oh, did you think we didn't know?" William's laugh was bitter. "We're the board of directors, Victoria. We know everything. We know about the hidden debts. We know about Richard's gambling. We know that without the Titan merger, Sterling Industries will be insolvent within 6 months." "You knew." Victoria turned to her husband. "You knew we were bankrupt and you didn't tell me?" Richard couldn't meet her eyes. "I was going to fix it. The merger was going to fix everything." "The merger that your wife just destroyed," Sarah added. "The merger that was our only chance. The merger that is now funding a foundation specifically designed to help the exact kind of people your family spent last night humiliating." Victoria sat down heavily. For the first time, the full weight of what she had done seemed to register. "We're going to lose everything," she whispered. "The houses, the cars, the foundation, everything." "Yes," William said simply. "You are." The apology video was filmed that afternoon. Richard stood in front of the Sterling Industries logo, his face haggard, his voice shaking. Victoria stood beside him, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Behind them, Bradley and Megan flanked their parents, their expressions carefully arranged into something resembling remorse. "My name is Richard Sterling," he began. "And on behalf of my entire family, I want to offer our deepest and most sincere apologies to Mr. Marcus Thompson." He paused, struggling to find words he had never imagined having to say. "Last night at an event in our home, my wife subjected Mr. Thompson to treatment that was inexcusable. She made assumptions about him based solely on his appearance. She denied him basic courtesy and respect. She publicly humiliated him in front of hundreds of people. And she did all of this to a man who had come to our home in good faith, prepared to enter into a partnership that would have benefited both of our companies." Victoria stepped forward. Her voice was flat, mechanical, clearly reading from a teleprompter. "I was wrong. My behavior was racist and cruel. I judged Mr. Thompson based on the color of his skin, and I treated him in a way that no human being deserves to be treated. I am deeply sorry for the pain I caused him, and I am committed to educating myself about the unconscious biases that led to my actions." Even as she spoke, her eyes betrayed nothing. No genuine remorse, No understanding. Just the words she had been told to say, delivered with all the warmth of a recorded message. Bradley stepped up next. I filmed the incident and laughed about it. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Then Megan. I falsely accused Mr. Thompson of grabbing me when he was actually helping me. I lied because I was embarrassed and scared. I'm sorry. The video ended with Richard making a direct appeal to Marcus. Mr. Thompson, if you're watching this, I want you to know that we understand if you can never forgive us. What we did was unforgivable. But if there is any way at all that we can make this right, we are prepared to do whatever it takes. Please, give us a chance to show you that we can be better. The video was uploaded to every platform simultaneously. Within an hour, it had been viewed 12 million times. The response was not what the Sterlings had hoped. This is the fakest apology I've ever seen, read the top comment on YouTube with 47,000 likes. Victoria looks like she's being held hostage. She doesn't mean a single word. They're only sorry because they got caught, said another. If Thompson had been an actual janitor, they would have bragged about this at their next party. Notice how they keep talking about unconscious bias, instead of just admitting they're racist. These people will never change. But the most devastating response came from Marcus Thompson himself. He posted a single tweet 3 hours after the Sterling apology video went live. I appreciate the Sterling family's statement. I also appreciate that it was made only after their stock dropped 40% and their creditors began circling. True character is revealed when people believe no one is watching. I saw your true character last night. An apology doesn't change what I saw. The tweet was retweeted 2.3 million times. That evening, Marcus was in his office when Patricia knocked on his door. The Sterling lawyers are online too, she said. They're asking for a meeting. No. They say they're willing to offer significant concessions. They're talking about a formal settlement. Reparations. Marcus looked up from his computer. They want to pay me off. Essentially, yes. They're offering $50 million to release a joint statement saying the matter has been resolved to everyone's satisfaction. $50 million. Marcus leaned back in his chair. To pretend that what happened last night was just a misunderstanding. That's the offer. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you know what my grandmother made in her entire life, Patricia working as a maid for 40 years? No, sir. Neither do I. Not exactly. But I know it was less than most of the people at that party spent on their cars. I know she never took a vacation. I know she wore the same 3 dresses to church every Sunday because she couldn't afford more. I know she died in a hospital room that she was terrified she couldn't pay for. He stood up and walked to the window. $50 million won't buy back her dignity. It won't undo the years she spent being invisible to people like the Sterlings. And it won't change what I saw in Victoria Sterling's eyes last night when she looked at me. What did you see? Marcus turned to face Patricia. I saw my grandmother's employers, every single one of them. The ones who made her use the back entrance. The ones who counted the silverware after she left. The ones who called her girl when she was 60 years old. He shook his head slowly. No settlement, no meeting, no joint statement. The Sterlings made their choice, and now they get to live with it. Patricia nodded. I'll inform their lawyers. And Patricia, the Grandma Rose Foundation. I want the first round of grants announced this week. $10 million distributed to 50 minority-owned businesses right here in Chicago. Make sure the press knows exactly where the money came from. The former Sterling Merger Fund. Exactly. Let them watch their salvation become someone else's opportunity. After Patricia left, Marcus sat alone in his office as the sun set over Chicago. His phone buzzed with a text from Isaiah. Dad, you're all over the internet. Kids at school are calling you a hero. Marcus smiled despite himself. He typed back, I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who refused to be treated like less than human. That's what makes you a hero, Dad. Most people just take it. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. His son was right, of course. Most people did just take it. His grandmother had taken it every day for 40 years. Millions of people took it every day, swallowing their pride, accepting the casual cruelties of those who saw them as less than. But Marcus had built an empire specifically so that he would never have to take it, so that his son would never have to take it, so that one day, hopefully, no one would have to take it. The Sterlings had reminded him why that mattered, and now they would serve as a reminder to everyone else. His phone rang. It was David Chen, his chief legal counsel. "Marcus, I have news. Sterling Industries' primary lender just called. They're accelerating the company's loan payments, demanding immediate repayment of $300 million. That was fast. It gets better. Two of their major suppliers have announced they're suspending contracts pending a review of corporate values. 3 board members have resigned, and their biggest institutional investor just filed a motion to remove Richard Sterling as chairman." Marcus absorbed this information. The dominoes are falling. Faster than anyone expected. Without the Titan merger, they have no way to cover their debts. The analysts are saying bankruptcy within 90 days. What about the family personally? Are they protected? Richard personally guaranteed several of the company loans. If Sterling Industries goes down, it takes his personal assets with it. The houses, the art collection, the cars, all of it is collateral. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about Victoria Sterling standing in her penthouse, surrounded by her diamonds, and her champagne so certain of her own superiority. He thought about how quickly certainty could crumble. "Let it play out," he said finally. "Don't accelerate anything, but don't slow it down either. Let the natural consequences unfold." Understood. One more thing, the press is asking for interviews. Every major outlet wants to talk to you. CNN 60 Minutes. Oprah's team called 3 times. No interviews. Marcus, this could be an opportunity to tell your story, to shape the narrative. The narrative is already shaped, David. I don't need to add to it. The Sterlings destroyed themselves. I just refuse to save them. He hung up the phone and turned back to the window. The city lights were coming on now, millions of tiny pinpricks against the darkening sky. Somewhere out there in a penthouse that was about to become a symbol of everything wrong with wealth and privilege, the Sterling family was watching their world collapse. Marcus felt no joy in it, no satisfaction. Just a heavy, tired sense that justice, when it finally came, was never as clean as people hoped it would be. But it was still justice, and sometimes that had to be enough. 3 weeks after the gala, Victoria Sterling stood in the foyer of her penthouse and watched strangers put price tags on her life. "This piece is early 19th century," an appraiser said, examining a painting that had hung in her family for 4 generations. "Auction estimate $200,000 to $250,000. Victoria said nothing. She had stopped speaking 2 days ago after her lawyer called to tell her that the bank was foreclosing on everything. The penthouse, the summer house in the Hamptons, the villa in Tuscany, the cars, the jewelry, the art, all of it seized as collateral for debts that could never be repaid. Richard found her there an hour later, still standing in the same spot, still watching. "Victoria." His voice was hoarse. He hadn't shaved in days. "We need to talk." "About what?" Her voice was hollow. "What's left to talk about?" "The lawyers found something. A way we might be able to save some of the assets. If we—" "Stop." Victoria held up her hand. "Just stop. I can't hear another plan, another strategy, another way to minimize the damage." She laughed bitterly. "There is no minimizing this, Richard. Don't you understand? We're finished." Richard reached for her arm. "We're not finished. We still have each other. We still have the children." "The children." Victoria pulled away from him. "Bradley was arrested last night. Did you know that, drunk and disorderly? He punched a photographer who was following him. It's already on TMZ." "I know. I posted bail this morning." "With what money?" Richard didn't answer. "That's what I thought." Victoria turned back to watching the appraisers. Megan won't leave her room. She hasn't eaten in 3 days. She keeps saying she wants to die. She doesn't mean it. Doesn't she? Victoria's voice cracked. Have you seen what people are writing about her? The death threats, the rape threats. Someone created a website called Megan Sterling is a Racist. It has her home address, her phone number, photos of her from high school. Richard's face went gray. We should call the police. The police. Victoria laughed again, that same hollow sound. The police who leaked my mugshot after I was arrested for assault. The police whose union just released a statement condemning our family. Those police. You weren't charged with assault. The DA dropped it. Because Marcus Thompson asked them to. Did you know that his lawyers called the prosecutor and said he didn't want to press charges? Said he'd already gotten enough justice. Victoria's hands were shaking. He's still controlling us. Even now. He decides whether I go to jail. He decides whether I get mercy. He's the one with all the power, and we have nothing. Richard sank into a chair. I never meant for any of this to happen. Neither did I. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I just saw a black man at our party, and I assumed he didn't belong, that's all. I made an assumption. And now we've lost everything. It wasn't just an assumption, Victoria. You called him worthless. You said he didn't deserve to breathe the same air as us. You threw wine in his face. I know what I did, Victoria screamed. The appraisers stopped and stared. She lowered her voice, trembling. I know what I did. I replay it every night, every single night. I see his face when the wine hit him. I see the way he looked at me. And I can't. Her voice broke. I can't take it back. I can't undo it. All I can do is watch everything fall apart. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then, the board voted this morning. Victoria closed her eyes. And, I'm out, effective immediately. They're bringing in a crisis management team. New CEO, new chairman, new everything. The Sterling name is being removed from the company. Removed. They're rebranding, calling it Horizon Industries now. They say the Sterling name is too toxic, that keeping it would cost more in lost business than starting fresh. Victoria absorbed this. The company her father had built. The company her grandfather had started. The name that had meant something in Chicago for 100 years, erased like it had never existed. My father would have died before letting this happen, she said quietly. Your father would never have thrown wine at a billionaire, Richard replied. The silence between them was vast and cold. What do we do now? Victoria finally asked. Richard stared at the floor. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Across town, Marcus Thompson was signing papers. This is the final grant approval for the Grandma Rose Foundation's first round of funding, Patricia said, sliding documents across his desk. 50 businesses, $10 million total. The press conference is scheduled for tomorrow. Marcus scanned the list. A woman starting a childcare center on the south side. A man opening a barber shop that would also offer job training. A young couple launching a tech startup focused on affordable health care. 50 dreams each one, now a little closer to reality. These are good, he said. These are really good. The selection committee did excellent work. They prioritized founders who had been rejected by traditional banks, people who had the ideas but not the connections. Marcus nodded slowly. That's exactly what I wanted. He signed the last document and handed the stack back to Patricia. As she gathered the papers, she hesitated. There's something else. Something I think you should know. What is it? Megan Sterling was hospitalized last night. Suicide attempt. Sleeping pills. Marcus went still. Is she alive? Yes. They found her in time. She's in the psychiatric ward at Northwestern. Marcus leaned back in his chair. He thought about the young woman who had fallen at the party, who had looked at him with something like gratitude before her face twisted into accusation, Who had lied about him to protect herself, never imagining what that lie would cost? She's 24 years old, Patricia continued. The same age as my daughter. I know. The internet has been brutal to her. The harassment, the threats, it's relentless. She can't go anywhere without being recognized. Can't use social media. Can't even leave her house. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, does the family know that I asked the DA not to press charges? I don't think so. The prosecutor agreed to keep it confidential. Make sure they find out. Anonymously. Through their lawyers, maybe. I don't want credit for it, but I want them to know that I'm not trying to destroy them. Patricia nodded. You're a better man than most, Marcus. No, I'm not. I'm just a man who remembers being 24 and making stupid mistakes. The difference is, my mistakes weren't broadcast to 300 million people. After Patricia left, Marcus sat alone with his thoughts. The satisfaction he had expected to feel, the vindication, the triumph, it hadn't come. Instead, there was just a heavy weight in his chest that wouldn't lift. His phone buzzed. Isaiah. Dad, can you pick me up from school early? I don't feel good. Marcus frowned. What's wrong? I don't want to be here today. Did something happen? Silence on the other end. Isaiah, talk to me. Some kids were saying stuff. About you. About the Sterling thing. What kind of stuff? That you're a bully. That you destroyed a family because of a little wine. That you should have just accepted the apology and moved on. Marcus closed his eyes. He had known this would happen eventually. The narrative was shifting, as narratives always did. The initial outrage fading, replaced by a more complicated story. Rich man destroys other rich people. Who really won here? I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. Thanks, Dad. Marcus found his son sitting on a bench outside the school, his backpack at his feet, his head down. He looked small, younger than his 12 years. Hey. Marcus sat down beside him. You want to tell me what happened? Isaiah shrugged. It's stupid. It's not stupid if it upset you. This kid Tyler, he was saying you're no better than the Sterlings. That you're just another billionaire who thinks he can do whatever he wants. That if you really cared about racism, you would have forgiven them instead of destroying their company. Marcus considered this. What do you think? I don't know. Isaiah looked up at his father. I mean, I know what they did was wrong. I saw the videos. Everyone saw the videos. But now their daughter tried to kill herself. And their son got arrested. And they're losing everything. He paused. Did you want that to happen? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. I didn't want any of this to happen. I wanted to go to a party, meet some business partners, and come home. That's all I wanted. But you canceled the deal. You took away all their money. I canceled a business partnership with people who showed me they couldn't be trusted. That's different from wanting to destroy them. Is it? The question hung in the air between them. Marcus realized his son was asking something deeper than he had words for. Something about justice and mercy. About consequences and compassion. About how to be strong without becoming cruel. Let me ask you something, Marcus said. If someone at school treated you the way the Sterlings treated me, if they called you worthless, threw things at you, accused you of crimes you didn't commit, would you still want to be their friend? No. Would you want to work with them? Trust them, build something together? No way. That's what I did, Isaiah. I didn't destroy the Sterlings. I just refused to save them. There's a difference. Isaiah thought about this. But they're still destroyed. Because they had built their whole lives on a lie. They were pretending to be rich when they were actually broke. They were pretending to be powerful when they were actually desperate. The merger with Titan was going to cover up all their failures. When I walked away, the truth came out. That's not destruction, that's reality. It still feels bad, though, watching them lose everything. Marcus put his arm around his son. Yeah, it does. And you know what? I'm glad it feels bad, because that means you haven't lost your compassion. You can be angry at someone and still feel sad about their suffering. That's not weakness. That's humanity. Isaiah leaned into his father's shoulder. Grandma Rose would have said the same thing, wouldn't she? She would have said it better. Marcus smiled sadly. She always did. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the other students stream out of the building. Eventually, Isaiah spoke again. Dad, yeah. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself, even if some people think it was wrong. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. The weight he had been carrying it didn't disappear, but it shifted, became lighter. Thank you, son. That means more than you know. That evening, Marcus received a call he hadn't expected. Mr. Thompson, this is Richard Sterling. Marcus almost hung up, but something in the man's voice, something broken and raw, made him hesitate. What do you want, Richard? To apologize, properly. Not through lawyers or press releases. Just me talking to you saying I'm sorry. You already apologized. On camera. With a teleprompter. I know. And it was garbage. Every word of it. Richard's voice cracked. I was trying to save my company. Trying to manage the crisis. I wasn't thinking about you at all. I wasn't thinking about what we'd actually done. Marcus waited. My daughter tried to kill herself last night. Did you know that? I heard. She left a note. Want to know what it said? Marcus didn't answer. It said, I'm sorry I lied about him. I'm sorry I ruined everything. I can't live with who I am. That's what she wrote. My little girl. My princess. She couldn't live with who she'd become. Richard was crying now. Marcus could hear the sobs breaking through his words. I did that to her. Victoria did that to her. We raised her to believe she was better than everyone else. We raised her to see people like you as threats instead of people. And now she's in a hospital bed with tubes in her arms because she couldn't bear the weight of what she'd done. Richard, no, let me finish. Please, I need to say this. Richard took a shaky breath. I'm not asking you to forgive us. I know you won't. I know you can't. But I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what we did to you. Not just that night, all the nights. All the years. All the times my wife looked at someone and decided they weren't worth her respect. All the times I stood by and said nothing. Marcus was silent. You asked me once if I knew what I could do to make this right. I didn't have an answer then. I do now. What's that? I can change. I can actually genuinely change. Not to get my company back. Not to save my reputation. But because my daughter almost died, and the last words she wrote were an apology to a man she'd never even met. Marcus closed his eyes. He thought about his grandmother, about all the employers who had never apologized, who had gone to their graves believing they had done nothing wrong. Richard, he said finally, I appreciate this call. I really do, but I can't give you absolution. I'm not a priest. I'm not asking for absolution. I'm asking for, I don't know, acknowledgement maybe, that a person can realize they were wrong. That change is possible. It's possible. I've seen it happen. But you don't think it'll happen for us. Marcus chose his words carefully. I think your family has a long road ahead. I think you've all been forced to see yourselves clearly for the first time, and that's painful. Whether you actually change or just learn to hide better, that's up to you. Fair enough. Richard's voice was steadier now. For what it's worth, I'm not asking you to restore the merger. I know that's gone. I know we're going to lose everything. But I wanted you to hear from me, really hear me that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry I did it. I hear you, Richard. Thank you. A long pause. Take care of yourself, Mr. Thompson. Take care of your son. How did you know about my son? I did my research. After. When I was trying to understand who you really were. Richard's voice dropped. He looks like a good kid. You should be proud. I am. Don't let him become like Bradley. Don't let him grow up thinking he's better than everyone else. It's poison. It destroys everything it touches. I won't. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the darkness of his office for a long time after that call. He thought about Richard Sterling, a man who had spent his whole life building something that was rotten at its core. A man who had finally seen the rot, but only after it had consumed everything. Was there hope for him? For Victoria. For their broken, desperate children, Marcus didn't know. But for the first time since that night at the gala, he found himself hoping that there was. Not for their sake, for his own. Because if people couldn't change, if cruelty and prejudice were permanent, immutable forces, then what was the point of anything? Why build foundations? Why fund dreams? Why fight at all? His grandmother had believed in change. She had believed that every small act of dignity, every refused insult, every stood up for principle, was a seed planted in soil that might one day bloom. Marcus wanted to believe that too, even now, even after everything. He picked up his phone and called Patricia. "The Megan Sterling situation," he said. "I want to do something, anonymously." "What did you have in mind?" "The psychiatric hospital, whatever the best private facility is for her condition. I want to pay for it, all of it. Treatment therapy, everything she needs, for as long as she needs it." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure?" "She's 24 years old. She made a terrible mistake. She shouldn't have to die for it. The press will find out eventually. They'll say you're trying to buy forgiveness. Let them say it. I know why I'm doing it." "Why are you doing it, Marcus?" He thought about the question, about his grandmother, about Isaiah, about all the times in his life when someone had shown him mercy he hadn't deserved. "Because my grandmother would have," he said simply. "Because being right isn't the same as being good. And because at the end of the day, I have to live with myself." Patricia was silent for a long moment. Then, "I'll make the arrangements." After he hung up, Marcus walked to the window and looked out at the city. Chicago spread out below him, millions of lights in the darkness, millions of stories being lived. Somewhere out there, the Sterling family was falling apart. Their empire crumbling. Their names becoming synonyms for everything wrong with wealth and privilege. And somewhere out there, 50 entrepreneurs were getting ready to build something new. Something that would never have existed if Marcus hadn't walked into that party, hadn't been humiliated, hadn't decided that enough was enough. The universe had a strange sense of balance. His phone buzzed. A text from Isaiah. "Coming home soon." Marcus typed back, "On my way. Pizza for dinner. Only if we get the place with the good crust." Deal. Marcus grabbed his coat and headed for the elevator. Tomorrow, there would be more press conferences, more legal documents, more decisions about the foundation and the company, and the 1,000 other details that came with running a $58 billion empire. But tonight, he was just a father going home to have pizza with his son. That was enough. That had always been enough. 1 year later, Marcus Thompson stood at his grandmother's grave. The December wind cut through his coat, but he didn't move. Snow was falling, just like it had been falling that night, the night everything changed. Isaiah stood beside him, taller now, 14 years old, and already showing signs of the man he would become. "Hey, Grandma Rose," Marcus said quietly. "I brought Isaiah. He wanted to come this year." Isaiah stepped forward and placed a small bouquet of roses on the headstone. "Hi, Great-Grandma. Dad talks about you all the time. He says you're the reason he's the man he is." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "A lot happened this year," he continued. "You probably know about it already if you're watching from somewhere. I hope you're watching. I hope you saw what I did." The wind picked up swirling snowflakes around them. "I didn't do it for revenge, Grandma. I want you to know that. I did it because you taught me, That dignity isn't something you negotiate. It's not something you sell. It's who you are even when people try to take it from you. Isaiah looked up at his father. Dad, are you okay? Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Yeah, I'm okay. I just miss her. What was she like? Really like, I mean, not the stories. Marcus thought about it. She was tired, all the time. Tired from working, tired from worrying. Tired from carrying the weight of everything on her shoulders. But she never complained. Not once. She just kept going, kept pushing, kept believing that things would be better for me than they were for her. Were they? In some ways. In the ways that matter. Marcus put his hand on his son's shoulder. I have money she could never have imagined. I have power she never dreamed of. But the things she really wanted for me, respect, dignity, a family that loves me, those are the things that actually matter. And I have those because of her. They stood in silence for a while, father and son honoring a woman who had shaped both of their lives. Dad, Isaiah finally said. Yeah. Whatever happened to the Sterlings you never really told me. Marcus took a deep breath. You really want to know? Yeah. I think I'm old enough. Marcus looked at his son, this boy who had grown so much in the past year, who had watched his father become a national symbol, and handled it with more grace than most adults could manage. Okay, he said. I'll tell you. Richard Sterling filed for personal bankruptcy 6 months after the gala. The man who had once employed 3,000 people, who had sat on the boards of a dozen charities, who had been photographed, shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers. That man now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Schaumburg, 40 minutes outside Chicago by train. He had found work eventually. A property management company had hired him as a junior associate, probably because someone thought it would be amusing to have a fallen billionaire answering phones and scheduling maintenance calls. Richard had taken the job without complaint. He had no other options. His commute was 2 hours each way. He woke at 5 a.m., took the train into the city, worked until 6 p.m., and took the train back home. By the time he walked through his apartment door each night, he was too exhausted to do anything but eat a microwave dinner and fall into bed. But something strange had happened to Richard Sterling in his downfall. Something unexpected. He had started volunteering. Every Saturday morning, Richard showed up at a community center on the south side, the same neighborhood where Marcus had grown up, where Rose Thompson had scrubbed floors for 40 years and taught financial literacy to teenagers. My name is Richard. He would tell each new group of students, and I'm here to teach you how to manage money. I'm also here to teach you what happens when you don't. He never mentioned who he had been, never talked about the penthouse or the private jets or the charity galas. But occasionally a student would recognize him from the viral videos that still circulated online. Hey, aren't you that racist guy? One teenager had asked. The one who lost all his money. Richard had looked at the young man, black maybe 16, wearing clothes that had clearly been handed down from someone else, and nodded. Yes, I am. So why are you here? Because I have a debt to pay, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life paying it. The teenager had considered this. That's pretty messed up, man, what you did. I know. You really threw wine at that dude. My wife did. I stood by and watched. That's almost worse. I know that too. The teenager had sat down in the front row and opened his notebook. Okay, teach me about money, but if you say anything racist, I'm out. Richard had smiled the first genuine smile he had managed in months. Fair enough. Victoria Sterling's journey had been harder. For the first 3 months after the bankruptcy, she refused to leave the apartment. She sat in a chair by the window, staring at nothing, speaking to no one. Richard would come home from work and find her exactly where he had left her, still in her robe, still unwashed, still lost in whatever private hell she had constructed for herself. Victoria, he would say, you need to eat something. I'm not hungry. You need to shower. You need to get dressed. You need to... I need to... What? Richard. She had turned on him one night, her eyes wild, her voice ragged. What exactly do I need to do? My life is over. Everything I was is gone. I'm 62 years old, and I have nothing. You have me. You. Victoria had laughed bitterly. You're a property manager, Richard. You answer phones for a living. You ride the train with people who can't afford cars. How is that supposed to help me? Richard had looked at his wife, this woman he had loved for 35 years, who he had watched transform from a vibrant young socialite into a bitter broken shell, and felt something shift in his chest. You're right, he had said quietly. I can't help you. Only you can help you. And until you decide you want to get better, nothing I say or do will make any difference. He had walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Victoria had sat alone in the darkness, listening to her husband's footsteps, feeling the weight of his words settle over her like a shroud. That night, for the first time since the gala, she had cried. Really cried. Not the performative tears she had shed for the cameras, not the angry tears of self-pity, but deep, racking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere primal and wounded. She had cried for hours, and when the tears finally stopped, something had changed. The next morning, Victoria had showered. She had gotten dressed. She had walked out of the apartment and taken the train into the city, not knowing where she was going, just knowing she needed to move. She had ended up somehow at a church, not a fancy church, not the kind of cathedral where she had once sat in the front pew, dripping with diamonds, accepting compliments on her generosity. This was a small, humble building in a neighborhood she would never have visited in her old life. She had walked in and sat in the back row. A service was in progress, and the pastor, a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a voice like warm honey, was talking about forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook, the pastor said. It's about freeing yourself from the hook. When you hold onto anger, onto bitterness, onto shame, you're the one who suffers. The people who hurt you have moved on. They're living their lives. But you're stuck carrying the weight of what they did. Victoria had listened. And here's the hard part, the pastor continued. Sometimes the person you need to forgive the most is yourself. You did something terrible. You said something cruel. You hurt someone who didn't deserve to be hurt. And now you're carrying that guilt around like a stone in your chest, letting it drag you down, letting it convince you that you're worthless. Victoria's hands had started to shake. But here's the truth. You are not your worst moment. You are not the terrible thing you did. You are a child of God, capable of growth, capable of change, capable of becoming better than you were. But you have to choose it. You have to want it. And you have to be willing to do the work. After the service, Victoria had approached the pastor. I don't know why I'm here, she said. I'm not religious. I haven't been to church in 30 years. The pastor smiled. And yet here you are. I did something terrible. You've probably heard about it. Everyone's heard about it. I don't watch the news. I'm Victoria Sterling. The pastor's expression didn't change. I'm Pastor Angela. Would you like to talk? They had talked for 3 hours. Victoria had told her everything. The party, the wine, the assumptions she had made, the cruelty she had inflicted. She had talked about her childhood, about her parents, who had taught her that some people were better than others, about the bubble she had lived in her entire life. And Pastor Angela had listened. She didn't judge. She didn't condemn. She just listened. What do I do now? Victoria had asked when she was finally empty of words. You start over, Pastor Angela said. You learn. You grow. You find ways to make amends, not to fix what you broke because some things can't be fixed, but to put new good into the world to balance the harm you caused. How? That's up to you. But I'd start by learning about the people you thought were beneath you, understanding their lives, their struggles, their humanity. Victoria had taken that advice. She had started volunteering at the church, helping with their food pantry, their homeless outreach, their after-school programs. At first, the people she served had recognized her. Some had refused to accept food from her hands. Some had cursed at her, called her names, told her she wasn't welcome. She had stayed anyway, week after week, month after month, taking the abuse, doing the work, slowly, painfully learning what it felt like to be judged on sight. It had taken 6 months before anyone at the church would speak to her voluntarily. 8 months before someone invited her to sit with them at lunch. 10 months before a young mother had looked at her and said, "You're different now. I can see it." Victoria had cried again that day, but this time the tears were different. Bradley Sterling had the hardest fall of all. The golden boy, the trust fund prince, the smirking face in the viral video, he had nothing to fall back on. No skills, no work ethic, no resilience. Everything in his life had been given to him, and now everything had been taken away. For months after the bankruptcy, he had raged. He had blamed his parents. He had blamed Marcus Thompson. He had blamed the media, the public, the jealous masses who had torn his family down out of envy. He had tried to leverage his notoriety into a comeback, pitched a reality show about fallen aristocrats, tried to write a tell-all book about his family's destruction, started a YouTube channel where he ranted about cancel culture and reverse racism. Nothing worked. No one wanted to hear his excuses. No one felt sorry for him. He had hit bottom on a Tuesday afternoon in July. Sitting alone in a Fleabag motel room, he couldn't afford holding a bottle of pills he had bought from a dealer in the parking lot, wondering if anyone would even notice if he disappeared. His phone had rung. It was Megan. "Bradley, I need you to come to the hospital, right now." "Why, what happened?" "Just come, please, I need my brother." Bradley had put down the pills. He had driven to Northwestern, the same hospital where Megan had been treated a year before, and found his sister in the psychiatric wing, not as a patient this time, but as a volunteer. "What is this?" he had asked, looking around at the other volunteers, at the patients in their hospital gowns, at his sister, in her modest clothes and minimal makeup. "This is what I do now," Megan said. "I come here 3 times a week and talk to people who are struggling. People who feel like they can't go on. Why? Because someone did it for me." She took his hand. "Bradley, I know you're hurting. I know you're angry. I know you think the whole world is against you, but it's not. The world doesn't care about you enough to be against you. You're just another person, same as everyone else." "I'm not the same as everyone else. I'm a Sterling." "We're not Sterlings anymore. We're just people. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start building something new." Bradley had broken down crying in the middle of the hospital corridor. His sister had held him while he sobbed, while he finally let go of the anger and the blame and the desperate need to be special. "What do I do?" he had asked. "I don't know how to be a regular person." "You learn, same way everyone else does. You get a job, you show up, you do the work. You stop expecting the world to give you things and start earning them." "I don't have any skills." "Then get some. Go to community college, learn a trade, start at the bottom, and work your way up." Bradley had taken his sister's advice. He had enrolled in a welding certification program at a community college in the suburbs. He had gotten a job at a construction company working alongside men who had never heard of the Sterlings and didn't care about his family's downfall. The work was hard. The hours were long. His body ached every night in ways he had never imagined possible. But slowly, gradually, Bradley had discovered something he had never known before: pride. Real pride. The kind that comes from building something with your own hands, from earning your own money, from looking at a finished project and knowing you contributed to it. It wasn't the life he had imagined, but it was a life, and for the first time, it was truly his. Marcus finished telling the story as they walked back to the car. Isaiah had listened without interrupting, his face thoughtful. "So they're all okay?" he asked. "The Sterlings. They're surviving. Whether they're okay, that's up to them." "And Megan, the one who tried to kill herself?" "She's doing well. She finished her treatment and started volunteering at the hospital that saved her life. Last I heard, she's going back to school to become a counselor." Isaiah was quiet for a moment. "Did you ever talk to any of them after that phone call with Mr. Sterling?" "No. Not even to see how they were doing. It wasn't my place. I did what I needed to do for myself. Their journey is their own. They reached the car and climbed inside. Marcus started the engine, but didn't pull away yet. "Dad," Isaiah said, "can I ask you something? Anything. Do you regret it? Walking away from the deal?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "No, I don't regret it. Even though it hurt people. The deal falling through hurt people who had built their lives on lies and cruelty. The foundation that replaced it helped people who had been overlooked and underestimated their whole lives." He turned to face his son. In the past year, the Grandma Rose Foundation has funded 218 businesses, created over 3,000 jobs, sent 47 kids to college who couldn't have afforded it otherwise. That's amazing. It is, and it never would have happened if I had swallowed my pride that night and pretended everything was okay. Isaiah nodded slowly. So sometimes doing the right thing hurts people. Sometimes it does. The question isn't whether anyone gets hurt, someone always gets hurt. The question is whether you're standing up for something that matters or just protecting your own comfort. They drove in silence for a while through streets Marcus had known his entire life, past the house where he had grown up, past the church where his grandmother had worshipped, past the school where he had first dreamed of building something bigger. "One more question," Isaiah said as they pulled into their driveway. "What's that? What do you want people to remember about all this? If they tell the story of Marcus Thompson and the Sterlings 100 years from now, what do you want them to say?" Marcus turned off the engine and sat quietly thinking. The snow was still falling softer now, blanketing the world in white. "I want them to remember that character matters," he said finally. "That how you treat people when you think no one is watching, that's who you really are. And I want them to remember that it's never too late to change. The Sterlings did terrible things, but they also had the chance to become better. Some of them took that chance, some of them didn't. That's the choice we all face every single day. And what about you? What choice did you make?" Marcus smiled at his son. "I chose to be the man my grandmother raised me to be. I chose to believe that my dignity wasn't for sale, no matter the price. And I chose to use the power I had to help people, instead of just getting revenge." He opened the car door. "Come on, let's go inside. I'll make hot chocolate." They walked together toward the house, father and son leaving footprints in the fresh snow. That night, after Isaiah had gone to bed, Marcus sat alone in his study, looking at a photograph on his desk. It was old, faded, the colors washed out by time. His grandmother, young and beautiful, standing in front of a house she had just finished cleaning, still in her maid's uniform, smiling despite her exhaustion. He had carried this photograph with him for 30 years. Through college. Through the early struggles. Through the billion-dollar deals and the magazine covers and the moments of triumph that she had never lived to see. "I did good, Grandma," he said quietly. "I think I did good." The room was silent. But somehow in the stillness, Marcus felt something like an answer. A warmth in his chest. A peace he hadn't felt in a long time. He set the photograph down and walked to the window. The snow had stopped falling. The city stretched out before him, quiet and clean, waiting for whatever came next. Marcus Thompson had started with nothing. He had built an empire. He had faced down cruelty and prejudice and emerged stronger. He had taught his son that dignity mattered more than dollars, and he had proved it in front of the whole world. But more than any of that, he had kept his promise. He had become someone his grandmother would be proud of. And in the end, that was the only victory that mattered. The Sterling name faded from memory within a generation, becoming nothing more than a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms and classrooms, a reminder of what happens when cruelty meets consequence. But the Grandma Rose Foundation grew. Year after year, decade after decade, it expanded, helping thousands of entrepreneurs, funding countless dreams, building a legacy of opportunity where there had once been only obstacles. And every year, on the anniversary of that December night, Marcus Thompson returned to his grandmother's grave with flowers and a simple message. We're still fighting, Grandma. We're still building. We're still proving that our dignity has no price tag. The wind would answer, the snow would fall, and somewhere in the universe, Rose Thompson would smile. Because she had always known her grandson was destined for greatness. Not the greatness of wealth or power or fame. The greatness of character. The greatness of standing tall when others tried to push you down. The greatness of building something beautiful from the ashes of someone else's cruelty. That was the lesson Marcus Thompson taught the world on the night he walked away from $5 billion. That was the lesson his grandmother had taught him his entire life. And that was the lesson that would echo through generations yet to come. Your dignity is not for sale. Your character is your legacy. And the measure of your life is not what you accumulate, but what you leave behind. Marcus Thompson left behind a foundation, a son, a story, and the unshakable truth that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be treated as less than you are. That is the real price of dignity, and it is worth more than any fortune ever made.